Story time about how my boyfriend almost ruined my relationship with my sister. So a little background information. I was 16 and I was a sophomore in high school at the time. Well, we're gonna call my boyfriend Alex. And whenever Alex and I first started dating, I would literally brag to all my friends about how nice he was, about how he treated me so good. Well, fast forward a few months, him and I were still dating. And originally my sister scared him. But eventually he had been around long enough to the point where they were super cool. Well, after that, I started realizing some off things. For example, the one night he was texting me, and all of a sudden he just stopped responding. And I knew that he didn't fall asleep because he was still texting my sister. Well, that should have been the first red flag, but as we know, I am blind to seeing red flags. Anyways, I didn't want to seem jealous of my sister, so I just decided to play it cool and act normal. But him, on the other hand, like for part 2. Part 2 of how my boyfriend almost ruined my relationship with my sister. So like I said, I decided to act normal and not be jealous. But him, on the other hand, he started finding reasons for him not to like me, and he was ignoring me. Like, he was just being very standoffish. So the one day my sister decides to leave her phone open on the couch when she goes to the bathroom, and I had this fantastic idea to go through her phone. Rightfully so, like, sis, don't be texting my man more than me. That's weird. Well, when I looked, there was nothing. He was just being super nice to her. And with me, on the other hand, his texts were super dry. By the way, my sister and I are twins. But she starts laughing at her phone, and I'm like, what did he say? And they were just typing random letters to each other. She has a better sense of humor than that, so I knew something was off whenever she was laughing at it. And then she says, I have something to tell you, but you have to promise me you won't get mad. And then she tells me that he said that he likes her. Well, after being mad at her for a while, I realized it was his fault. Storytime about how my best friend set me up to get cheated on. So a little background information, I was 16 and in 11th grade, and I went to a very strict boarding school. I was best friends with this girl who we're gonna call Emma, and we were the closest out of our whole friend group. Well, our boarding school also had a building for all the boys, but it was like a mile or two away from our building. Well, the days that we had off, the juniors and seniors were allowed to go visit each other's campuses. Well, a couple of the senior boys put together a little celebration before the first day of school. So my friends and I got ready, we went to the party, and my friend Emma pointed out this one group of guys. So we went over there, they were all super nice, but I hit things off with this kid who we're gonna call Ethan. We exchanged numbers. Well, when we got back to the dorm, I told Emma about Ethan, and she was like being super weird. She was like, ew, you shouldn't date him. He's really sus. I would have thought that she wished that she got with Ethan, but she hit it off with one of the guys from the same friend group. So Ethan and I end up dating, and Emma did not like that. Like for part 3. Part 2 about how my best friend set me up to get cheated on. So like I said, sooner or later, Ethan and I started dating, and Emma did not like that. And Ethan was honestly the best boyfriend ever. Never saw any red flags or anything like that. So fast forward, Ethan and I have been dating for 4 months. Well, winter break rolled around, and you had a choice to just take the day off, or you could stay and help the school clean up and stuff like that. So Ethan and I decided to go help at the school, and he was just acting super different. It wasn't like cheating or anything like that, but something was off. Like, he would tell me to go through his phone, but the weird thing was is he always deleted his messages with Emma. Well, the one day Emma sends me a video of Ethan making out with some girl. So I broke up with Ethan. He said it wasn't his fault, but he couldn't tell me why. Well, a month goes by, and one of the other girls in our friend group says that she has to tell me something. Apparently, she went through Emma and Ethan's conversations, and Emma was blackmailing him with a video of him destroying school property. She said that she would send it to the school if he didn't send her proof of him cheating on me. Now, Ethan and I have been dating for 2 years, and Emma still tries to reach out, but everyone in our friend group cut her off. Story time about how I saw my boyfriend propose to another girl in front of me. So a little background information. At the time, my boyfriend and I had been together for around 4 years. We had 2 kids together, and our relationship was pretty rocky. Within the first year of us dating, he would cheat on me all the time, and both times that I was pregnant, he would cheat on me also. Now, after I popped out the second kid, our relationship was going pretty well. And if you're wondering why I didn't leave him when he was cheating on me all the time, well, it was mainly because I grew up in a broken home. And remembering how hard it was on me whenever my parents broke up, I didn't want that for them. Well, over the past few months, my boyfriend had been traveling all over the country with his dad, going to meetings and stuff because he was getting ready to take over half the company. Well, fast forward, it's a Thursday, and my boyfriend has a meeting with some associates who flew in from out of state, and later that night we were supposed to get on a flight with our friends to go to the Bahamas. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend literally proposed to another girl right in front of me. So like I said, my boyfriend had a meeting with some associates who flew in from out of town. And that night we were supposed to be on a plane to the Bahamas with our friends. So while he was getting ready for this meeting, I went and I dropped the kids off early, and he went to this meeting, and I drove our luggage over to our friend's house because they were just going to drive us to the airport. So my girlfriend and I are super pumped to go on this trip. So we decided to start drinking early, and we went somewhere to get drinks. She suggests this high-end place because the guy at the bar has a crush on her and always gives her free drinks. So we're sitting there having a really good time drinking at the bar. So while we're sitting there, we hear a bunch of clapping and cheering coming from outside. So us being drunk and nosy, we go out there to see what's going on. And what are the chances I walk out there and my boyfriend is down on one knee in front of another girl? And I'm not very confrontational whenever I drink, so I told my best friend to just take me back to her house. When we got back, it was around 6 p.m. And my boyfriend tells me that he's just going to meet us at the airport like for part 3. Part 3 about how my boyfriend proposed to another girl right in front of me. I know this is late, but better late than never. So like I said, we left, I went back to her house, and my boyfriend has the audacity to text me, I'll just meet you guys at the airport. So my best friend's like, what do you want to do? Do you want to go beat him up? Of course I said no, so I told her and her boyfriend to just go to the airport while I figured out what I was going to do, and to not say a word. Which was hard for my best friend because she was confrontational as fuck. So I texted my boyfriend saying that I was sick and I just wasn't going to go to the Bahamas with them, when in reality I was packing up our whole house, leaving him with only his clothes and his shoes. So I put all the stuff in storage and I just decided to move back to my mom's house. And yes, this was in a span of a few days. So the whole time that he was gone, I was acting like everything was okay. On the last day of the trip, I sent him a text saying that I knew about everything. And I said I never wanted to hear from him again and I never wanted him to see the kids again. And he took that quite literally. I never got a text back. Well, 4 months after all this happened, I soon find out that he got a new house in North Carolina with his new wife and they have a daughter on the way.
I just found out my husband is leaving me after I give birth, so he can start fresh. Disclaimer, this is not my story. I will list the source in the caption of this video. I'm currently 7 months pregnant with twins. The pregnancy itself was planned. My husband and I both have always wanted 3 children since we got married 9 years ago. We have 2 sons, age 8 and 3, and we found out we are having a boy and a girl. My husband and I were together since I was 25 and he was 30. We've had a wonderful relationship that got stronger after our oldest son was born. Then I got pregnant with our second son. People have always flirted with my husband, but I sensed that this time he was flirting back and always wanting to be somewhere else. I suspected he was cheating, but when our second son was diagnosed with health issues, he had a come-to-Jesus moment, it seemed, and those increased business trips had stopped all of a sudden. We then discussed completing our family as I was getting older, and after a year, I got pregnant. He started getting distant again, and from the get-go, I was sicker than I had been with my other pregnancies. Then it all blew up when we found out we were having twins. He stormed out of the room when he found out. He started spending days away again. He argued with me over small things and started trying to withhold money for regular stuff, like our son's violin lessons. When our son's teacher said he needed a larger size violin, my husband resisted buying one for him. He also resisted date nights, saying that they were too expensive, and once blew up at me at a restaurant for ordering dessert, saying I spent too much. When he was away yesterday, I was going through the attic, and in a box tucked away, I saw bills for hotels and receipt for jewelry stores. I also saw a bunch of... Part 2. I just found out my husband is leaving me after I give birth, so he can start fresh. Disclaimer, this is not my story. I will list the source in the caption of this video. I also saw a bunch of crumpled up pieces of paper, but then I saw a typed out letter that was dated a month ago. It said that he was very remorseful, but that he was going to a therapist and needed to come clean to me. He said he had fallen in love with somebody else, and that this person was a recent college graduate, and her father, who had been nagging her to start dating her future husband, found out that she had been having an affair with a married man. He was upset and demanded that he either marry her, or else he was not going to let her waste her precious good years on a married man anymore, not under his roof. My husband wrote that I was always more mature than him, and set in what I wanted in life. But he felt he married me too quickly and needed more time to mature and know what he wanted. He thought his 30s was enough to know what he wanted, but he grew in his 30s in a way he felt I didn't, and he just could not lead the lifestyle of all these kids screaming and crying and having a household of 6. He said his mother would never forgive him if he walked out on me before I gave birth, and he wanted to be there, but he was leaving afterwards. He told me he had already gotten a transfer approved, and it was a long time in the making. He said he needed a fresh start because he regrets all of our kids and definitely did not want twins. He says that he wants to travel the world, and when he's ready to have kids, he wants them with his mistress and only wants one. He apologized profusely and said that he found someone whose life pace was in step with his and he deserved to be happy. He promised that if the kids didn't hate him, he would love them from afar, but he wants this chance to start fresh. I started shaking and crying. I had to get someone to come over and watch the kids while I locked myself in the basement sobbing. My husband came home late last night, and while I wasn't crying when he got home, I was visibly upset and he didn't notice. My husband wants to be in the delivery room, and I'm scared to confront him on this right now. I'm in the middle of a high-risk pregnancy and will be getting a C-section for the first time. I also checked our bank accounts because my husband does the finances, and I have trouble finding consistent work after I was laid off. With my degree, I'm very scared for the future. The assets I can access would last me about 2 months if I penny pinch. I'm planning on selling my car for more funds and borrowing one from my sister's family. I blame myself for not reading the signs more clearly. I don't know how to tell my kids. Am I wrong for telling my wife not to talk to my dad, but I will continue to? Disclaimer, this is not my story. I will list the source in the caption of this video. A month ago, my oldest turned 16. For his 16th birthday, the plan was to let him skip school, get to the DMV when it opens, take the driving tests, go on a small road trip, be back around when school gets out, and then all go out for a family dinner. On the weekend would be his celebration with his friends. Skipping the school for the DMV test was planned in advance, but the road trip was a surprise. A few days before the road trip, my wife asked me to take our 3-year-old with me that day. I said I wasn't taking a toddler to the DMV. That place is a cesspit. Also, the road trip is for additional driving practice before he is able to drive unsupervised. A toddler distracting him was not a good idea. My wife said that she wanted the day to herself, and if I wasn't willing to take our toddler, the birthday stuff needed to be moved to the weekend so that I can. I said I would take our toddler to work with me the next day, but our oldest birthday is his day, so he is the priority. She got angry and said that she's made 100 sacrifices for our kids, and saying that she isn't a priority, not what I said, is disgusting. It was a big fight. My son's birthday, she texted me that I'm an asshole multiple times. At the dinner, she was in a bad mood. After everyone ate, my dad asked us to go out to the parking lot. He handed the keys of his car to my son, saying that he was getting a new one. He also said that he would continue to pay the insurance for a year. My wife asked me if I knew about this, and I didn't. She doesn't believe me. My wife has called and texted my dad multiple times, asking if he's going to do this for all of our kids, saying he shouldn't have done this without asking us first, and telling him that if he can't do this for all of our kids, then he needs to take the car back. Eventually, my father texted her, "Stop bothering me, woman." My wife told me that I needed to stop talking to my dad because he used offensive language. I told her that she needed to stop talking to my dad, not me. I'll support her not talking to him. My wife says I'm disrespecting her and that I won't listen. So was I wrong? My husband has been cheating on me for the past decade. Disclaimer, this is not my story. I will list the source in the caption of this video. Me, 30 female, and my husband, 30 male, have been married for 5 years, together for 11. Literally had a movie-like relationship, just a constant honeymoon phase. Of course, it got boring here and there are a few bumps in the road, but I would have never thought of this, ever. Yesterday, I was looking up a recipe on Pinterest, using my husband's phone, when he got a message from a contact called Internet Company. But it was a video, which I thought was weird, so I clicked on it. Within the video, there was a little girl saying "dada" and a woman in the background that got super excited. I couldn't believe it. I scrolled up, tons of texts all about different things. When he would be visiting, if he could pick Kelly up today, daycare for Dina, date nights, all sorts of stuff. I couldn't believe my eyes. I managed to find the woman on Facebook. All it did was really hammer in that this was really happening. I tried to convince myself that those weren't his kids. Maybe he was just cheating on me with someone with kids. Please let him be cheating on me with someone with kids. This woman had 2 daughters, worked at an office job, had posted pictures of her daughters and what she made for dinner every night. I took a breath and messaged her. It was so much worse than I could have imagined. These 2 girls were both his, one being 11 months and the other being 4 years old. I was already panicked at the thought of him cheating on me for 4 years until I asked, how long? 10 fucking years. They had been dating for 10 years. He kept up a double life for 10 years. I don't even want to fathom how. Apparently, this woman had no idea. He always claimed he had to live away from her for work. She showed me countless videos and images of them being together. I just couldn't believe it. How could he do this to me? Why would he do this to me? We have been trying for a kid for 4 months, and I was so excited to go through this experience together, but that's wrong. It wouldn't have been together. I'm so glad I'm not pregnant. I can't imagine living this lie while pregnant. I just can't look past this. I feel like such an idiot. How could I not tell? Update. I moved out of our house. I'm staying with a friend. We're getting divorced. I confronted him with said friend, just simply because you never know what can happen. But at least I got some form of closure out of this. First off, he didn't even say sorry at all. Didn't even ask me to stay. Just huffed and said, okay, if this is what you want. When I asked him why, he said because you both went along with it. So of course I asked further. Information. And guess what? Jenny knew. For some odd reason, she was okay with this. I still don't understand why she would lie and mislead me. He told me Jenny didn't have a good job, so she was a bad investment. Jenny was uglier. Jenny wasn't as good as me. She wasn't as clean as me. She wouldn't be as good of a partner as me. I asked about the kids, and of course he clarified that their first kid was an accident. He literally did the air quotes. Apparently Jenny poked holes in the condom, which he found out about but never confronted her on. He told me that he still loved me and that we could work this out if I really wanted to, that he would abandon Jenny and his daughters. I said no.
Storytime, my best friend slept with my boyfriend on my birthday. So a little background information. I was 16 and a sophomore in high school. Well, I have this best friend who we're going to call Sarah. Her and I became super close over the summertime, but she was like on and off best friends with this other girl who we're gonna call Mackenzie. But I had this boyfriend who I was also really on and off with. And Sarah knew about all the problems within our relationship. Well, I guess I underestimated how close Sarah and Mackenzie were, because everything that I told Sarah, she went back and she told Mackenzie. And not to mention, Mackenzie was really close with my boyfriend. So of course she told my boyfriend everything that I was saying. This ended up causing a huge fight between my boyfriend and I. Well, the night before my birthday, my boyfriend and I were going back and forth arguing, and around 12 a.m. on my birthday I forced myself to fall asleep, and at around 1 a.m. I woke up to 20 Snapchat notifications, all from my boyfriend. And when I opened them, I saw the worst thing ever. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my best friend slept with my boyfriend on my birthday. So like I said, I woke up at around 1 a.m. to 20 Snapchat notifications from my boyfriend, and I saw the absolute worst thing ever. The first 5 notifications were just him calling me names, and then all the other ones were just him doing stuff with my best friend. And you guys can already guess what I mean by doing stuff. So at this point, I was heartbroken, I was pissed off, but of course because I gotta have the receipts, I went and took a video off my sister's phone of everything that he sent me. In the morning, I woke up to a text from an unknown number, and it turned out to be my boyfriend's best friend saying that him and Sarah were now together. So my boyfriend asked me to meet up and apologize. So I met him at this park, and he apologized to me, telling me that he wanted to get back together with me. But I told him to KMA, and I left. Then Sarah came to my house and keyed my car, and then we fought on my front lawn. And then after that, she was texting me about how she was coming back to my house. Like for part 3. Part 3 about how my best friend slept with my boyfriend. So like I said, she came to my house and she keyed my car. And I caught her, so I went outside. We fought on my front lawn. After she left, she kept sending me messages saying that she was coming back to my house so we could fight again. But she was blocked, so I didn't get any of the messages. And then my ex came to my house and brought me flowers. And this was all in a span of 1 day. So because it was my birthday party, my cousins were at my house, and I already told them everything that happened. So they went outside and they fought him. Well, then I ended up sending all the videos to his parents, her parents, his siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins who loved me. Then I also decided to take legal action, and I sent the cops all of the screenshots of Sarah harassing me. And my sister got a video of us fighting, so I sent that to them too. Well, since she was 18 and I literally just turned 16, she got 3 months in county jail for minor harassment and minor physical altercations. So in the end, I think I won. Storytime about why I will never ever ride in an Uber ever again. So a little background information. I was 16 and in 11th grade. So my parents decided to go away for the weekend. They wanted to go and visit some family who lived like 2 hours away. So I decided that it was a good idea to invite my friends and my boyfriend and his friends over for a sleepover. And once we were all at my house, we realized that we were pretty bored, so we decided to go to the fair. So we decided to go to the fair around 9:15. But because we were all lazy AF, we decided to just get an Uber to the fair instead of driving. The Uber there was fine. We went, we had a super great time, and then it was time to go home. It said our Uber was going to come at 10:30, but instead it came at 10:45, which I didn't think was a big deal because Ubers are late sometimes. So we all got into the Uber, and mind you, my house was literally 15 minutes away. So I ended up taking a nap because I was really tired, and then I woke up, like for part 2. Part 2 about why I will never ever ride in an Uber ever again. So like I said, my house was only 15 minutes away, so since I was really tired from the fair, I decided to take a nap. Well, I woke up 20 minutes later, and we were in the middle of nowhere. Like, when I tell you, we were on a road that literally just kept on going. I asked my boyfriend where we were, and he said that we had been on this road for a while. So at this point, we're all texting each other. And all of our friends are saying, no, we're fine. This is the way. So then I look up my address on Google Maps. And we are 45 minutes away from my house. So then I send it in the group chat. And now everybody starts to freak out. Not to mention, our Uber driver was on the phone the whole time, but he had his AirPods in, and we couldn't understand anything that he was saying. So that's when my friend Sophie, she was in the front seat, she shoved the directions in his face, and was like, I think you're going the wrong way. So then he busts a U-turn, and he's yelling at this point on the phone. And an hour later, we make it back to my house. I have a feeling if it wasn't for my friend Sophie, we wouldn't have made it out of there.
I found out my fiance is with me for money and family business. Disclaimer, this is not my story. I will list the source in the caption of this video. To preface, my family owns a business that is very well known in our sector and makes loads of profit. Thus, I am a trust fund baby. I try not to be spoiled and have always worked myself. I met my fiance Mark when I was 20 and working as a waitress. We began dating a few months later, and he proposed to me last year. Now, Mark is not poor. He is upper middle class, and while he doesn't struggle in life, he didn't have much to spend and lived very frugal. I thought he was an honest man because he always wanted to pay for his own things, rejected expensive holidays, and when we were still dating, he would cook for me instead of going out to eat. What I'm trying to say is I never had the impression that Mark was trying to take advantage of me or my family. In the beginning, my family was a little sketched out and brought up the gold digger argument. I stood up for him and fought with my dad. They came to love and accept him. When Mark graduated, Dad hired him, and he is now a high-earning position. Sunday, I was supposed to work in the evening, and I was going to stay with my sister. But I got a fever, and I was basically just non-functioning, so I stayed home. Instead of staying in our bedroom, I made my way to the guest room that is better ventilated and has a mini fridge and its own bathroom. I didn't want to stand up at all or walk around, so I just bunkered all my stuff there and closed the door. Mark came home when I was fast asleep, and I was woken up by loud voices in our garden. I pushed the curtains a bit to the side, and Mark was there with his few friends. Part 2. I found out my fiance is with me for the money and family business. Disclaimer, this is not my story. I will list the source in the caption of this video. Just as I wanted to say hello, I noticed that his friends were talking about me. His friends kept laughing and calling Mark the man. They then started laughing about me being willing to not sign a prenup. Then one of the girls was there and said something along the lines of, Jesus, you are about to make some bank. Mark laughed and said, yeah, just 3 more years and I'm free. At that moment, I felt sick to my stomach and wanted to throw up. I kept hearing them call me Trust Fund Barbie and stupid and so on. I didn't know what to do, so I just laid petrified in my bed and waited until the people left and Mark went to bed. I texted my sister and snuck out to her place in the middle of the night and just passed out without telling her anything. I haven't returned home and just told Mark that I was sick and didn't want to make him sick. My sister has been really worried, but I just feel so ashamed about everything. My family was right about Mark being a gold digger and I fell for it. Even if I tell my family what happened, I have no proof. My father can't fire him because he's a dick. As far as I know, he's excellent at what he does and he has no legal footing to fire him, I think. I just feel so confused and ashamed and angry. I opened up to my sister and we're talking to my dad tomorrow. Update. I was very tempted to play the long game and lead him on, but I decided to just present him with the prenup and look into his reaction. After telling my dad, we invited Mark over for lunch and would serve him the prenup there. However, to be sure about things, I asked him if he had anyone over because our neighbors had complained about loud noises. He said yes and that his buddies were there. He didn't mention the girls I saw. We finished lunch and Dad served him the papers saying that it was a must for getting married. You could instantly see that he didn't expect this. He got angry and asked to speak to me alone. We went into the other room and he began babbling about blindsiding him and that this just really felt like a personal attack. He was trying so hard to sell me the role of victim, making me out to be the villain. Then he just said that he needed time to think everything through and left. I have to admit, I kind of broke down and began to second guess myself, but I could keep it together. My family didn't pull the I told you so. We looked into everything and I have legal rights to a victim. The lawyer handled everything, wrote an official eviction notice, and after a lot of talk, Dad decided to present Mark with a deal so that he would leave the company. After that was all sorted out, I decided to simply text, hey Mark, Trust Fund Barbie here. As you said you would be free of me in 3 years, I'll do you a big favor and set you free now. Kisses. My phone blew up with Mark's messages after I sent that. He texted and called me so many times I had to switch my phone off. He came to my sister's place as he wanted to explain the situation. He promised that it was just a joke like a million times. I said it wasn't cutting it. They disrespected me in my own house and I didn't want to be with
Story time about my toxic best friend group. So a little background information. I was 16, and it was the end of ninth grade going into summer break. And one day randomly these 3 girls added me on Snapchat and put me into a group chat. Now, I had seen them around school, but I never said hi to them. I was finding it very hard to make friends in ninth grade because everybody was so toxic. Anyways, like I said, they added me to a group chat, and all of them said hi to me. And usually I wouldn't respond to random people on Snapchat, but because I had seen them around school, I decided why not. And it was so random. They just started sending pictures of themselves into this group chat, and it low-key made me feel bad because I kind of hated my physical appearance. But anyways, they asked me if I wanted to be friends with them. Oh, and by the way, their names were Stacy, Savannah, and Emily. So of course I said yeah because it was hard for me to make friends. So fast forward, my birthday was coming up. So they asked me if we could hang out. They said they wanted to give me an early birthday present. So I said yes, of course. Like for part 2. Part 2 about my toxic friend group. So like I said, they asked me if we could hang out to give me an early birthday present. So I said yeah. And Emily had a pool at her house, so they asked me if I wanted to go over there. And of course I said yeah, it was summertime and it was hot outside. Well, when I got there, they asked me to order the pizza and they said that I had to pay for it. So I said yeah, because they were my besties at the time. So I used some of my birthday money to pay for the pizza for all of us. And when I got back to Emily's house, they were all already in the pool. So I was kind of mad. 1, because they didn't go with me, and 2, they were just hanging out without me. So we're sitting there eating the pizza. And then after, all 3 of them get in the pool and they start taking pictures with each other, not even asking me to be in any pictures. So at that point, I was so annoyed. I was just like, you guys are being so rude. And Emily's like, what are you talking about? We didn't even do anything. And then, of course, Stacy and Savannah agreed. So I was like, 1, you didn't even ask me to be in any pictures and you made me pay for the pizza for all of us. And she was like, you're ugly. We didn't want you in the pictures. So I threw the pizza away and went home. Storytime about how I was almost kidnapped. So a little background information. I was 13 and it was the summer going into ninth grade. I was on a road trip with my family and we needed to stop for some gas. So we stopped at some random gas station and we see this lady get out of her car and walk in. No big deal though. So we're inside and we're waiting in line to use the bathroom. So we were in the front of the line and then that lady was behind us and then there were a few people behind her. So as we're standing in line, she FaceTimes some guy and then she starts pointing the camera at people around the store and she would be like, oh, do you like this? And he would say yes or no. Well, then she points the phone at me. And then he goes, yeah, that's the one. And my mom and I were super creeped out about this because she was being super loud and she was taking a really long time at this gas station. So my mom goes into the bathroom and then she starts to talk to me. She starts asking how old I am, where I'm from, and if my mom and I were here with anybody else. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I was almost kidnapped. So like I said, she starts to talk to me and ask me super personal questions. And I'm being vague about everything that I possibly can be. So I go in, I use the restroom after my mom. We grab some snacks and then she follows us around the whole store. And she didn't even use the bathroom. So we leave the store and we saw the car that she got out of and it was parked right next to our car. When originally it was parked all the way across the parking lot. And I'm guessing the man who she was on FaceTime with was in the car. And he was sitting right where my car door was. So my mom and I decided to walk around a little bit, and this lady is just following behind us the whole time. So we call my dad, who was across the street at another store. We told him about the situation, so he comes and picks us up, and then he sees the car pick the lady up, and they start following us. So then they followed us for about 25 to 30 freaking miles. And then they ended up turning off on some random road. And I have a feeling if my mom and I didn't pay such close attention to what they were doing, I would have been kidnapped and trafficked. Storytime about how I caught my grandma with my dad. So a little background information, I was 16, and it was the first day of 11th grade. Well, my friend wanted me to come to the mall with her after school that day. She was like, screw your grandma's birthday, just come to the mall with me. So the plan was I would sneak onto my best friend's bus after school and skip my grandma's birthday. By the way, my grandma was low-key a hoe. Like, half of her kids won't even bring their husbands around her, because after she got their numbers, she would end up sending nude pictures to them. Anyway, so the end of the day rolls around and I go to my locker to get my book bag when I'm called down to the office. So I go down to the office and my mom is there to pick me up because she said that we needed to do a few things before our grandma's party. Well, my grandma was at our house getting ready and my mom forgot her wallet at home, so when we went back home, I went to go put my book bag in the house. When I walk in and I see my grandma and dad on the couch, and I'm not even going to say what they were doing, and my mom is walking past them like she didn't see anything. So after that, I called one of my aunts and asked if I could stay with her for a while, and now I don't talk to any of them. Story time about how my stepmom got with my boyfriend. So a little background information, I was 18 and it was my senior year of high school. And my mom and my dad got a divorce whenever I was 11 years old. My dad moved to a whole other state. My sister went with him, and then my brother and I stayed with my mom. Because my mom said it was a time where we need our mom in our lives. But to be honest, I think she just wanted child support. Anyways, after elementary school, I moved back in with my dad. And at the time, he was dating this woman who we're going to call Carol. And she was like the sweetest girl I had ever met. I actually called her mom even though they weren't married because I was so close to her. So fast forward, they get married. I'm super happy for them. My senior year of high school, I start dating this guy named Paul. Well, since I was close with Carol, I told her about him first. After a while of him and I dating, she suggested that he should come over for dinner. So I ended up inviting him to this party that my dad hosts every year. And I was super excited. Well, I see him and Carol talking, and I'm super happy because I want him to get along with my family. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my stepmom got with my boyfriend. So like I said, I invited my boyfriend to this party that my dad hosts every year. And he starts talking to Carol, which I was super happy about because I wanted him to get along with my family. Well, during the party, him and Carol go missing for like half an hour. And there were a ton of people there, and my dad's house was big as fuck. So I was like, okay, maybe he got lost. So finally I find him, and then I asked him where he had been. Then he said that he went to the bathroom, which was extremely weird because I had already showed him where the bathrooms were on the first floor whenever he came to the party. So I was like, whatever. And then Carol came downstairs, but I didn't really think anything of it. Fast forward, I was on my way home from this tutoring class. My friend was driving me because I didn't have a car. Well, we get home and we hear loud moaning noises all the way outside, and I see Paul's car in my driveway. And I was like, well, it can't be my dad because he's out of town. So I go in, I catch them, I ask them how long it's been going on. They say since the party. So I tell my dad about it, he gives her a second chance, and then I move back in with my mom. Story time about how I ruined my ex-best friend's relationship and reputation in 2 days. So a little background information, I was 14 in 8th grade. I was in a very toxic friend group of 3, and we all secretly talk crap about each other. So 2 of the girls in my friend group decided that they didn't want to be friends with me anymore, for absolutely no reason. The one girl texted me saying, I don't want to be friends with you anymore, and then the other girl literally just played along with it because she can't think for herself. She was like, yeah, I've been planning on doing this for like 2 weeks. So I got very embarrassed by this because they started going around the school telling everybody about it. And not to sound like that person, but I was really popular. I had a lot more friends than them, and the only reason why people liked them was because they were my friends. Anyway, so I started texting the boys that they liked. And I was like, hey, I think you should know that they've been talking to other people while they're talking to you. And I just thought that that was really wrong. And when they asked who, I gave them names of boys that they both used to talk to. And then when the girls texted me about it, like for part 2 about how I ruined my ex-best friend's relationship and reputation in 2 days. So like I said, I texted the boys that they liked saying that they were talking to other people. And then of course my ex-best friends got mad, and then they started texting me about it saying, oh, why are you lying, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, honestly, I just think it's really wrong for you to try and play these boys who actually have feelings for you. Yes, I know I was a little crazy, but who isn't? Anyway, so then I decided to get my mom involved because I had been friends with these girls for a while. So my mom knew their parents very well. So I told my mom I was really worried about them because they were starting to get into really bad stuff and hanging out with the wrong crowd. So I couldn't be friends with them. And they tried to talk me into doing stuff. So then my mom called their parents. Well, then their mom started to drop them off and pick them up every day because they were grounded. Well, then their mom started to apologize to my mom because their kids were such bad influences on me. And then when everybody asked why we stopped being friends, I told them that they made fun of my grandma who isn't alive. And 4 years later, everybody still hates them. Story time about how I almost got kidnapped by my online boyfriend. So a little background information, I was 16 and in 11th grade. So a year before this all happened, I posted a picture on Instagram saying, add me on Snapchat if you want to be friends. Yes, I was that person. Anyway, so this really cute guy adds me on Snapchat. And after about 3 months talking, he said that he wants to meet me in person. And he didn't sound sus at all, so I was like, sure. So we met at this park that was like 30 minutes away. And we met there around 6 o'clock, so when the sun was setting. And he was super nice. It was super romantic. Well, then we went to his house. We watched a movie and we did the nasty. So after that, he asked me if I want a drink. And what I could have swore was 20 minutes later, I wake up in an abandoned farm shed with no clothes or anything. So I start screaming my head off. I don't have my phone or anything, so I start to run. And then he grabs me. He says, if you try to run or you try to scream, I am going to kill you. Like for part 2 about how I almost got kidnapped by my online boyfriend. So like I said, I wake up in this abandoned farm shed. I don't have no clothes. I don't have a phone. So I try to run and he grabs me. He says that if you run, I will kill you. So I was like, okay, fine. What do you want from me? So he starts putting on lingerie and tells me to also put some on so we can take pictures together. What the actual you know what? So after that, he starts crying and he starts telling me his whole life story and how he's not who I think he is. Turns out that he's 32 and he just goes online pretending that he's 17 years old. So I just try to comfort him, right? It ends up working. He brings me my clothes, tells me to run, or else he's going to once again kill me. So I run, I go to this gas station, get picked up by the police, find my parents. Luckily for me, I paid attention to where everything was. He was arrested, he's still in prison to this day, and I got grounded for 3 months.
I've been sleeping with my mom's fiance, and I don't know how to tell her. Disclaimer, this is not my story, this is an anonymous submission. I, 22 female, met my soon-to-be stepdad Christian, 37 male, about 8 months ago at a bar near my college. As you can imagine, our first encounter was a drunken one-night stand. The next weekend when I went back with my friends, he was there again. This time we exchanged phone numbers before we went back to my place again. Even though it started off as sex, it quickly became more, and about a month after meeting, we officially started dating. I know that the age gap is pretty excessive, but I had hearts in my eyes when I was around him, and I thought that the feeling was mutual. He lived a few towns over, same town as my mom, 39 female actually, but I never connected the dots. Since we had only been seeing each other for a few months, I never thought to bring him up to my mom. About 2 weeks ago, I went over to my mom's house to pick her up for a lunch date. During lunch, she brought up her new boyfriend. I honestly wasn't paying much attention because I was texting Christian. I congratulated her and I asked when I could meet him. We set up a dinner for the following weekend. The dinner was 3 days ago. I can't explain how I kept it together when I walked into the kitchen and I saw him holding my mother from behind. I will say though, his face was priceless when he saw me walk into that kitchen. And had I had this big, elaborate gotcha planned, I would have been amused. Instead, I pretended that I was just meeting him for the first time and introduced myself. We had a dinner, and I will say it was extremely awkward. When my mom walked me to the car, she mentioned it and hoped that I wasn't too uncomfortable. She told me she didn't know what had gotten into him, because everyone who met him could attest to what a fun, life-of-the-party kind of guy he was. Little did she know that's exactly how me and my friends would describe him as well. Now, my mom and I have never been close, especially after my dad died 5 years ago. But I never thought that I would end up in some twisted form of a Cornhub skit. She normally calls me a few times a week just to touch bases in a 5-minute catch-up. But now I have been avoiding her calls for the last week, and even went to stay at a friend's place to avoid Christian after he showed up to my place to try and explain himself. Can you believe he even had the audacity to cry? Like he was the victim in all of this. I have zero interest in hearing any of his pathetic excuses, but how do I even begin to tell my mom? She already had her heart broken after my father's death. I honestly want to just pretend I never met him so she can stay in her happy little bubble. But she deserves the truth. That's some fuckboy. Excited to try. Turn it around and show me. What are you excited to try? What is that?
Black licorice.
Yeah, and you want to try it?
Yeah? Because Wednesday tried these.
Okay. This is what you wanted to try. I don't think you're going to like it, okay?
I think I'm gonna like it.
You think you're going to like it?
Wednesday likes black licorice.
Oh, okay, if Wednesday likes it.
I'm gonna try it.
Take a big bite.
Mmm.
You don't like it?
I do.
You did.
Look.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You didn't like it? Here you go, spit it in here.
You're right.
I was right.
I'm gonna go get some water. That was not good.
That was not good.
Yeah.
Drink more water. My fiance left me at the altar because I'm pregnant. Disclaimer, this is not my story. This is an anonymous submission. My ex-fiance Greg, 28 male, and I, 25 female, were together for the last 6 years. In our time together, I was diagnosed with endometriosis. And about a year ago, I had a minor surgery to have some of the deposits removed because we had discussed starting a family together. During all of this, we had started planning our wedding for a year from now to give me sufficient time to recover. praying we would be able to conceive on our honeymoon. They told us that the average couple gets pregnant within a year of trying, and it would take us longer than a typical couple. So it was a shock when I got a positive test about a year after the surgery. By this point, we were in the final 2 weeks before the wedding, and the soonest I was able to get an appointment was about a month out. I decided to tell Greg the night before our wedding that I was pregnant because he had overheard my conversation about changing the plans for my bachelorette party. He was stunned at first, but his excited reaction seemed genuine. After he left for that night, he was still texting me, but at about 2:30 in the morning, his text stopped. The next day, I got a text from his best man telling me that he was extremely hungover, but that he would have him waiting for me down the aisle. Only, I never got to make it down the aisle, because before it was set to happen, no one could locate him. He did have the courtesy to leave a note telling me that he wasn't ready to be a dad, and he had hoped that I wouldn't be able to conceive because of my diagnosis. The asshole for wanting my husband to start paying more for our housing. Disclaimer, this is not my story, this is an anonymous submission. My husband, 30 male, and I, 29 female, have been together since I was 20 and got married when I was 26. We moved in together when I was 25 and we were splitting our rent evenly. I was making about $65,000 while he was making about $80,000. It didn't make a huge difference in my budget versus his to split rent 50-50 for $2,600 a month. However, things have changed. I got pregnant a few months after we got married, which we were so excited about. I didn't want to not work, but I wanted to be home with our baby, so I found a full-time remote job in my field of work. The downside is I took a pay cut in my salary, from $65,000 to $50,000, and we continue to split rent in our apartment. In the last few years, my husband has received numerous raises and has switched his job. He is now a senior business analyst, making roughly $195,000 a year. Since we are having a child, we decided we needed a bigger apartment. We found a 3-bedroom for about $4,000 a month. He still wanted to split rent evenly, despite my protest and despite me wanting to try to find a smaller apartment for less. In the end, I sort of let myself get walked all over because he really is such a smooth talker, and I do love him. In the last 2.5 years, our rent has increased to $4,400. My take-home monthly pay after taxes is about $3,600 a month. I'm paying $2,200 a month in rent, and I'm also taking care of our baby, our home, doing chores, and cooking daily. My husband is gone from 8 a.m. to typically 7 p.m. I am burnt out. I barely have enough money a month to do things I enjoy. I feel like I'm financially struggling while my husband is living a life of luxury. I spoke to him a few days ago about splitting our rent based on our income and pay an equal percentage of our income so that it's more fairly. His reaction stunned me. He asked me if I'm suggesting he pay me for being a mother, and that stunned me. I really had no response, getting the itch to apologize like I always do. But I feel I really am right here. Am I the asshole for not reminding my ex he was supposed to come over and see our daughter? Disclaimer, this is not my story. I will list the source in the caption of this video. I, 26 female, have a 7-year-old daughter. My ex, 28 male, wasn't involved in her life by his own choosing. Back in December, he reached out. It took some time, talking, and a little therapy, but he's back in our daughter's life for about 4 months now. We are working with the courts to establish paternity and for him to get custody. In the meantime, I've let him visit her at my place, he's taken her on day trips, and since getting a bigger apartment, he's had her spend the night. He was supposed to visit her Wednesday, have dinner with us, and watch a movie. We try to do things, the 3 of us, per the therapist's recommendation, so she can see us get along. My ex said he'd be over around 6. He didn't show up. By 6:30, my daughter was hungry, so I fed her. I tried to put off the movie, but eventually I let her watch it. She was disappointed about her dad not showing, but I put her to bed at 9. 11:30, my ex called freaking out. He said he forgot he was supposed to have dinner. He only remembered because his girlfriend came home from work and asked how everything went. Rather than apologizing, he got mad at me and asked why I didn't call him. I said I'm not going to chase him around. I already spent 9 months of my life doing that when I was pregnant, begging him to be in her life. It's up to him to make an effort and remember this stuff. We had therapy the next day, and she's on my side. However, my ex insists that I should have called him. I'm frustrated that he hasn't tried to apologize to our daughter. My mom says that I should have called. Oh, am I the asshole for not reminding my ex he was supposed to come over and see our daughter? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.
Storytime about how my boyfriend and best friend were sneaking around behind my back. So a little background information, I was 15 and in 10th grade. So my mom and dad were split up and I was pretty much allowed to do whatever I wanted because of that. So I was dating this boy named Jacob. Well, my best friend Alice literally hated him. Like low-key, every once in a while, she would try to break him and I up. And when I would call her out on it, she would just deny it. Anyway, so the one day I didn't go to school because I was super sick. So the whole day I was trying to text Jacob and Allison, but nobody was answering me. Which was extremely weird because no matter what, Allison would always text me back. So after I knew the school ended, I went to Allison's house. Nobody was answering the door, so I used the spare key. I walk in and all I hear is a very loud banging coming from her bedroom. So I walk in, I see my boyfriend and her together, and then he starts saying that she drugged him. So I went on his phone, I see a bunch of old text messages between him and her, and them exchanging pictures. And then sis wants to start giving me an attitude, so I punched her in the face, and then I left and I don't talk to either of them. Story time about the girl who was weirdly obsessed with my best friend. So a little background information, I was 14 and in 9th grade, and I went to a private school, so there was only one class per grade. So my best friend and I were in class together, and we're gonna call her Bella. And then there was this girl, Gabby, who I'd kind of been friends with for almost a year. Well, Gabby was a whore for popularity. Like, anything that the popular kids would ask her to do, she would get on her hands and knees and do it. This woman did not care. Well, we had a project working up, so all three of us decided to work on it together. So I invited them over my house, and Gabby said that she needed to use the bathroom. So Bella offered to show her where the bathroom was. Probably 3 minutes later, Bella comes running up the stairs like she just saw a ghost. She was telling me that Gabby took all of her clothes off and tried making out with her. Well, that night they both spent the night, and I wake up in the middle of the night to Gabby pinning Bella to the wall trying to kiss her. But I went back to sleep and acted like nothing ever happened. Fast forward, it got to the point where Bella was actually feeling really unsafe, so her parents switched her schools. Story time about the girl who faked assault for attention. So a little background information, I was 15 and it was my sophomore year of high school. So we're gonna call this girl Carly. Well, every week this girl would come in with some sort of bruise or cut on her. Me being a decent human being, I would ask her what happened. Well, every week she would either say that somebody beat her up or she was SA'd by this one guy who took a video of them while they were doing the nasty. But you could completely tell that it was not against her will. Well, everybody would believe her because always believe the victim. Well, the same thing happened again with a different boy. Everybody saw the video, and I'm talking like people from different schools. So it got into a routine of her telling us how she would have to get abortions every month. So fast forward, I head to my first class of the day, which was English. Well, I look over at her because she sits right next to me, and I see a huge bruise on her neck. Like, it looked like somebody had been choking her. Now, her and I weren't in the same friend group, but we were kind of friends. So I lean over and ask her what happened, like for part 2. Part 2 about the girl who faked assault for attention. So like I said, we were sitting in English class and I look over at her and she has this big bruise on her neck and it looked like somebody choked her. So I leaned over to her and I asked her what happened, and she said the guy who was in the video with her, the most recent video, he SA'd her. So I told her to come to the bathroom with me before the bell rang. So we go in and I immediately grab a paper towel and put it under some water with some soap, and I go to put it on her neck. And she starts screaming and like ducking and swerving. Well, I ended up swiping her neck with the paper towel. And there is makeup all on this paper towel. And the bruise is just like smudged all over her neck. So I was like, what the hell is wrong with you? She told me not to tell anyone. And that was her way of making friends. Even though this girl had plenty of friends. So when we got back to class, the bruise had a completely different shape. And she changed her story to me beating the shit out of her in the bathroom because she slept with my non-existent boyfriend. 3 years later, she is still doing the same exact shit. Story time about my unhealthy obsession with my ex-boyfriend. So a little background information, I was 18 and in 12th grade. And him and I have been dating for about 4 years. And it was around Thanksgiving, so it was pretty much college decision time. I got accepted into UCLA and I was really happy because it was super close to home. And my boyfriend, who we're gonna call Devin, got accepted there also. So I was super excited that we did not have to do the long distance thing. Until a week later, he calls me, and apparently he got some soccer scholarship. So now he's going to Berkeley. So I was like, okay, maybe we can make long distance work. Well, then he tells me that he doesn't want to make it work and he thinks that we should just break up. Well, a week after that, him and I were sleeping together again. So I thought that meant that we were back together. The one day I was leaving his house and I heard his mom talking about me. And she was like, oh, is she coming to the Christmas party? And I was super, super happy. Until Devin says, oh, we're not together anymore and I'm thinking of inviting a different girl. Well, a week later, the party rolls around and I decide that I'm going to show up anyways. Like for part 2. Part 2 about my unhealthy obsession with my ex-boyfriend. So like I said, he thought that he was bringing some random girl to his Christmas party, and I decided that I was going to show up there anyways. So I'm sitting in the car outside of his house the day of the Christmas party, pretty much just giving myself a little pep talk. Eventually I go up, I knock on the door, his dad answers, gives me a big hug, and tells me that he's downstairs with all of his cousins playing the video game. So I go downstairs, and as soon as I get down the stairs, all of his cousins look at me, and they give me the look of like, oh shit, she is not supposed to be here right now. And then I see the bathroom door closed with the light on. So I walk over, open the door, and what do I see? A girl from our school giving my boyfriend head. Well, my ex-boyfriend, but still, he was my boyfriend. So I didn't even give her time to get up before I started wailing on her. Few punches and kicks later, my boyfriend starts screaming in pain. After that, I got kicked out of the house, and I had to pay some medical bills because she bit my boyfriend. And I'm still on probation for beating her ass.
Am I the asshole for exposing my friend's reason for a cash bar at her wedding? Disclaimer, this is not my story. I will list the source in the caption of this video. I, 40 female, have a friend, 40 female, who recently got married. I am close enough to her to have been in her wedding. When we were planning her wedding, she kept mentioning how she was on a budget. Thankfully, she has connection and was able to put together an amazing dream wedding within her budget. With a guest list of about 200 people, they invited 300, but 200 RSVP'd yes. Her venue was a gift from her uncle, who owns a wedding venue in New England. Her caterer was a gift to her from a friend who owns an amazing restaurant. Her flowers were a gift from her aunt, who is a florist. Their rings were heavily discounted from a friend who works for a jewelry company and let her use their discount, so they paid the cost. Her DJ and photographer were both also gifts, as one of the family members of the wedding party has a family event entertainment business. I guess what I'm trying to convey is that a lot of her wedding was gifted to her. Her largest expenses with the wedding were her dress and their rings. No shade, the wedding was amazing, she looked stunning, and everyone had a fantastic time. At the wedding itself, there was a cash bar. The bride and groom aren't big drinkers, so I can totally get why they wouldn't want to fund anyone else's total buzz on their dime, especially when they were trying so hard to save for their honeymoon. After their wedding, they had saved enough to be able to go to a honeymoon in Italy for a month. Roughly 2 months after their wedding, she and I got together for dinner. She showed me pictures from her honeymoon, and they were gorgeous. I told her again how happy I was for her, them, and we ordered. Halfway through dinner, she dropped the bomb on me, and I was absolutely stunned. Actually, I was pissed. She told me that a family member of hers owns a liquor store, and they gifted all of their alcohol for her wedding to them. All she had to do was find someone to be the bartender. She asked one of the event bartenders at her uncle's venue if they wanted to make some extra cash. She offered them $20 an hour plus tips, and then told all of her guests that the bar was cash, and they used that money towards their honeymoon fund. Her last reception lasted roughly 4 hours. I went up to the bar a few times, and because she set the prices as standard, I probably spent about $100 on 4 or 5 drinks plus tip. With 200 guests, some of them were drinking more and some were drinking less. If I used my amount as an average out, she made roughly $20,000 on her wedding night. That doesn't include the gifts people gave her. I personally gave her a $200 check. I realize these numbers are speculation, but that is all I have to go on since she didn't give me an actual amount. She did say that the bar money covered a lot of her honeymoon. Invite my parents or my sister to my graduation because I didn't want to deal with the disappointment. Disclaimer, this is not my story. I will list the source in the caption of this video. My parents have always put Cassie first. Cassie did need extra support, as she does have genuine issues with depression and anxiety, but they refused to compromise, and it always came at my expense. The final straw was my high school graduation back in 2019. Cassie had a pageant at the same time. The plan was for both of our parents to attend the first half of Cassie's pageant. Our mother would stay, and our dad would leave to attend and record my graduation. Before Dad was about to leave, Cassie said she was having anxiety and needed both of them there. He texted me to find my own ride home from graduation. I had been so hopeful that my parents would finally follow through on their promise to be there for me. In the honors sector class photo, I was the only student who didn't have any family members come. I felt awful. My mother, Dad, and Cassie were already home when I got back. They had ordered dinner and were celebrating Cassie's pageant. They didn't even seem to remember or care about me or my graduation. My parents tried to act friendly and congratulate me, but I ignored them. My mother tried hugging me, but I pushed past her. I decided that I just couldn't depend on them to not disappoint me. My college graduation was 3 weeks ago. I didn't even bother reaching out to my mother, dad, or Cassie. I gave my ceremony tickets to 2 friends and donated the rest. My mother and dad reached out to me, saying they had just learned about my ceremony through social media. Neither of them went to college, so they assumed that the college got out at the same time as the local high schools. They asked why I hadn't even asked them. I told them that they've proven that I can't depend on them by always leaving me as a second thought to Cassie. I know she has issues and needs extra support, but they never even tried to compromise, and I didn't want to deal with the disappointment again. My parents told me that they and Cassie were heartbroken that their daughter and sister would disregard them in this way. We have other family members who my parents are much closer with after the pandemic. They said how my parents felt so bad about my high school graduation and that I was being selfish, denying my parents the chance to make it right and finally be able to put their guilt behind them. I'm worried that they're right and I'm not being understanding of Cassie's needs. Was I wrong for not letting my kids go on vacation with my ex because it's my time with them? Disclaimer, this is not my story, this is an anonymous submission. So right now, both of my kids, 16-year-old son and 9-year-old daughter, are extremely mad at me because I won't give up my appointed time with them. My son won't even talk to me, and my daughter is crying all the time. Little backstory, me and my ex divorced shortly after my daughter was born. I blame him for it, and he blames me. I won't go into detail here. We ended up with 50-50 custody agreement, switching every other week. While this was 8 years ago, we're still not on good terms. We rarely ever talk to each other outside of the kids, and I'm perfectly fine with that. One thing we have agreed on since the beginning, though, is that we don't plan things on days that aren't ours. And unless it's extremely important, we don't switch days or weeks. In the 8 years since we've been divorced, I have never asked him to give up his day with the kids. And I've never given him one of my days, even if he begged. Well, last week my ex contacted me and told me the good news. His parents are hosting a week-long family reunion in the summer at Disneyland, and he wants to take the kids. Well, the problem is that it's on one of my weeks. He asked me to let the kids stay with him that week, or to switch a week with me, and I shot him down. It's my week with them, and I get to spend it with them. I told him that if it's so important, reschedule, but he claims that his parents can't do that, and this is the only week that the whole family can go, and he told me that I needed to think of them. I told him tough luck, and I hung up on him. Well, this last Sunday, when my ex dropped the kids off, my son refused to talk to me, and my daughter wouldn't even look at me. When I asked my ex what was wrong, he refused to talk to me, only saying, "Ask them," in a snarky tone before leaving. When I asked my daughter what was wrong, she burst into tears and said I was not letting Daddy take them to Disneyland. Asking my son, who still refuses to talk to me, it turns out that my ex told them that I was not letting them go to Disneyland with him. He's trying to paint me as the bad guy. I sat both of them down last night to talk to them and explain that it's my week with them, but they refused to listen to me. My daughter just cried, and my son told me that I'm only doing this to get back at my ex. I'm not, though. I think it's unfair for him to do this when his parents scheduled it during my time with them. I demanded an apology from my ex, and for him to set things straight, but he refuses, and his last text to me was saying, I can't tell them the truth because they already know it. I'm so pissed right now, but would I be wrong for not letting my kids go when my ex scheduled something during my time with them? How is it my fault when he scheduled this during my time with them? I'm pregnant and my husband has been sleeping with my mother. Disclaimer, this is not my story. I will list the source in the caption of this video. I, 26 female, have found out that my husband, 30 male, is having sex with my mother, 52 female. I honestly don't know how to react. I'm 4 months pregnant and I'm trying not to stress since it's bad for the baby. I honestly had suspicions about my husband cheating. When I announced my pregnancy, he seemed happy. Over the moon, actually. He was kissing me, telling me how lucky he was to have me, but now he's changed. About 2 weeks after my surprise announcement, he stopped hugging me, kissing me like usual. He stopped eating the meals I'd make for him after work and said he had already ate. I found out 3 days ago. I went through his phone while he was in the shower and found text messages, videos, pictures. I'm sick to my stomach thinking about what I saw. I saw pictures of my mom in lingerie, and he was replying to her with pictures of his thing, saying he was so hard for her. I even saw a message of her. He had said that maybe they should stop since he didn't want to hurt me, but my mom just told him I wouldn't get hurt as long as they kept it a secret. What angered me the most was the message she sent a few days ago. I love you so much, more than you think. You've helped me through the passing of my beloved ex-husband, and for that I truly thank you. I know how hard it is for you to keep this secret. For me it is too. I love my daughter with all my heart, but she will have to accept eventually that love is love, that the heart wants what it wants. Our hearts want each other. I thought that ever since my husband died, nobody would ever love me because I'm just an old woman. But you have shown me how to love myself, and you make me feel young and sexy again. Let's keep having fun and cherishing each other. I think it's important to note that my father passed away 5 years ago from a stroke, and my mother said she refused to get back into dating because my father is her forever love. I'm fucking crushed, and I know it's the fact that they had sex after that message, because that was the night he didn't come home until 1 a.m. I actually threw up after reading that message. I have screenshots of the messages, and I have sent the videos to myself. I'm hurt so bad. Part 2. I'm pregnant and my husband has been sleeping with my mother. Disclaimer, this is not my story. I will list the source in the caption of this video. I confronted my husband when he came home from work. I told him that I know everything. I showed him the pictures and the messages. At first he denied, but when I showed him the evidence, he started crying. Actually crying. He had the nerve to cry and get on his knees while holding me and caressing my stomach. He told me I would be a bad mother if I left him and raised my child without a father, because a baby needs a dad in their life to fully grow mentally and physically. I honestly don't know what else to say except that that's pure BS. I told him that I was contacting a lawyer in order to file for divorce. I had already packed my things before he came home. I'm currently staying at a local motel about 30 minutes away from home. I asked my cousin if I can stay with her for a few days and she has agreed. I'm getting everything sorted from there. My husband has been blowing up my phone with messages and apologies. He told me that if I take him back, he won't do anything to ever hurt me again, and will cut all ties with my mother. As for her, I've also confronted her. I messaged her once I got to my motel and I told her that I was pregnant and that she will never get to see her grandchild. I have also moved all of my finances that I shared with my husband into a personal savings account. I have chosen to cut off all ties with my mother. She messaged me just a few hours ago and I honestly have no heart to reply. It also made me rethink of my situation. She said, "I'm so sorry for the pain and hurt I've caused you. It was never meant to go this far. I love you so much with every inch of my heart, but you are not the victim. How dare you hold this against me and take away my right to see my one and only grandbaby? You are cruel. If you do this, you will forever live life regretting. Please do not do this to me. I am your mother. I love you. I have ended it with my husband. We are no longer on speaking terms. Please push past this. A child cannot be raised without a father or a grandmother. I love you. Please call me." I left out some of the more personal things she said to me. I have a lawyer and I'm in the process of looking for an apartment. I have no intention on allowing either my former husband or my mother into my child's life. But I'm also afraid that my child will grow up deprived of many child-father bonding experiences. I want to move on and away from all of this. As for my husband, his messages have gone quiet, which I'm thankful for. My cousin has been helping me through this and is currently the only family member other than my mom and my husband who know about the affair. At this point, all I want to do is have my baby.